The invisible maze, and the clues hidden in your beginning. Have you ever felt like you're walking in circles that despite all your efforts, the same patterns, the same challenges, the same inner battles return again and again? You set goals, you make plans, you push forward, but something keeps pulling you back. It's as if your life is following a hidden script, and you're not the one writing it. This isn't just a coincidence. It's not just bad luck or a lack of effort. It may be something far deeper, something woven into the very fabric of your life. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the invisible maze, a life lived according to unconscious patterns, archetypes, and inherited beliefs. You feel stuck not because you are broken, but because the path you're walking is shaped by forces you haven't yet seen clearly. More than just a birth, the moment you were born was more than a biological event. It was the beginning of a story. Your story shaped not only by your genetics or family, but by something Jung called the collective unconscious. This is the shared psychic inheritance of humanity, filled with ancient patterns, symbols, and archetypes. From that first breath, you became part of a vast and mysterious web, the rhythms of nature, the energy of the cosmos, the psychological seasons of the human spirit. Your birth wasn't random, it was aligned with a specific moment in time, a moment charged with symbolic meaning. Jung believed that this timing, this kairos moment, carries important clues, clues about your deepest drives, clues about your emotional blueprint, clues about your recurring challenges and your hidden gifts. Just as a tree carries the DNA of its roots and the memory of its first season, you carry within you the echoes of the moment you arrived in this world. Your birth was a kind of spiritual fingerprint, utterly unique, yet connected to something much larger, the puzzle within, that feeling you have that something is missing, that you're meant for more, that you're close to a truth you can't quite grasp. It's not your imagination, it's your soul whispering to you, calling you to look deeper, to awaken from the trance of repetition. Maybe you've tried to fill this in a gap with achievements, relationships, approval, but none of it lasts because what you seek isn't out there, it's within, hidden in the unconscious, waiting to be discovered, remembered, reintegrated. The invisible maze only begins to dissolve when you turn inward, when you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and instead ask, "What is the pattern here? What am I being shown? What part of me has gone unseen, unloved, unclaimed?" A cosmic blueprint. What if your birth month, your season of arrival carried an archetypal imprint? What if, like the changing seasons, it marked a rhythm within your psyche, pointing to the roles you are here to play, the energies you are here to balance, the lessons you are here to embody? This isn't fatalism. It's not saying your path is fixed. Quite the opposite. It's about awareness, because when you see the pattern, you can step outside it. When you name the unconscious force, you can begin to dialogue with it, and when you reconnect with the deep intelligence behind your beginning, you reclaim your power to shape what comes next. The collective unconscious, the hidden language of your soul. Carl Jung believed that beneath the surface of our personal lives, beneath our memories, our upbringing, even our personality, there lies a deeper layer of the psyche, the collective unconscious. This isn't just an abstract idea, it's a living, breathing structure that shapes our emotions, thoughts, behaviors, and even our relationships. It's the ancestral memory of the human soul, the symbolic DNA of every human being. Within this invisible web live archetypes: the mother, the hero, the seeker, the shadow, the healer, the wise old man. These are not just characters, they are primordial energies, timeless roles we all carry in different combinations. You might think you're making choices freely, but how much of what you do is really inherited, passed down through your lineage, your culture, or the deeper language of humanity? The signs you've ignored. Have you ever felt like life was trying to send you a message? A strange coincidence, a repeated number, a gut feeling you couldn't explain, a dream that lingered. Long after you woke up, Jung called this synchronicity the moment when you're in a world and the outer world align, as if the universe is trying to speak your language, but most of us don't know how to listen. We brush it off, we call it random, we go back to the noise, and then we wonder, why do I feel so disconnected? Why do I feel unseen even in a room full of people? Why does success feel hollow and love feel fleeting? You may have tried to fill that inner ache with career goals, with relationships, with distractions, but nothing truly worked because the emptiness isn't asking you to do more, it's asking you to remember who you really are, and to do that, you must go within beyond your persona, your roles, your surface identity, and meet the archetypal self that lives in the collective unconscious, the inner map hidden in your birth. Jung believed that when you were born, you inherited not just a name or a nationality, but an archetypal configuration, like constellations in the night sky. These patterns shape the way you see the world, what you long for, and what wounds you carry. Your birth month, your season of arrival, carries an ancient energy, a symbolic alignment with specific archetypes. Maybe you were born in a month aligned with the warrior-driven, bold, but prone to burnout, or the caregiver empathetic, nurturing, but often forgetting your own needs, or the visionary full of ideas, but wrestling with grounding them in reality. You are not broken, you are simply not in harmony with the deeper music you were born to dance to realign with it. You must learn to read the symbols to see your struggles not as failures, but as initiations into your own myth. The price of forgetting who you are, when we ignore the collective unconscious, when we live only on the surface, we become hollow, we over-identify with our jobs, our status, our appearance. We become addicted to proving ourselves, constantly chasing, never arriving, and deep down, something aches. A voice whispers, this isn't all there is, there's something I've forgotten, I'm not living the life I was meant to live. Jung called this a crisis of individuation, the moment your soul starts pulling you inward, asking you to shed false identities and come home to your essence, the return to alignment. The first step is recognition, the second is remembering, the third is choosing to walk differently. You are not separate from the universe, you are a thread in its ancient tapestry. Your birth was not an accident. It was a placement, a poetic alignment of soul and symbol, time and energy. When you remember this, the maze begins to open and you begin to walk, not in circles but in spiral, back towards your wholeness. Archetypes and birth months. The energy you were born into. For thousands of years, mystics, astrologers, and philosophers across cultures from ancient Egypt to India, from Greek thinkers to Celtic seers, believed that the moment of birth was not just biological, it was symbolic. It marked the soul's entry into a particular energetic rhythm, a specific frequency in the cosmic symphony of life. Jung didn't call this fate, he called it archetypal inheritance, the idea that each of us is born into a living field of meaning, shaped by ancient psychological patterns. These patterns, known as archetypes, live in the collective unconscious. They are universal, they are older than language, they appear in myths, dreams, fairy tales, and art across every civilization. And they also appear in you. Birth month as archetypal mirror. The month you were born in carries a distinct energy. Like a season within the psyche, some are born in months aligned with the warrior, bold, courageous, but often restless. Others embody the sage, contemplative, wise, but at times withdrawn. Some are guided by the healer, nurturing, empathic, yet vulnerable to burnout. Others are led by the seeker, driven to find truth, but easily lost in questions with no answer. These archetypes are not rigid labels. They're inner currents guiding forces that move through your choices, your relationships, your challenges, and even your dreams. And each one carries two faces, light and shadow, the dual nature of archetypes. Every gift, when ignored or misused, becomes a burden. The leader becomes a tyrant when disconnected from humility. The artist becomes self-destructive when overwhelmed by their own sensitivity. The caregiver becomes a martyr when they forget to care for themselves. The visionary becomes paralyzed when their dreams are never grounded in action. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your birth month isn't a rulebook, it's a map. It doesn't predict your future, it reveals your starting point. It shows you the terrain, the gifts you're carrying, and the shadows you may face along the way. Why it matters. When you don't understand the archetypal energy you carry, you might choose the wrong career, one that drains instead of energizes you. Repeat the same patterns in relationships, always chasing love but never feeling seen. Ignore your gifts or fear your own power, but when you learn to name these energies, you reclaim your inner compass. You begin to see your life not as random but as richly symbolic. Patterns that once confused you begin to make sense, and your struggles become invitations, not punishments. Your archetype is a seed. Think of the archetype in your birth month as a seed. If you understand it, nourish it, and work with its nature, it will grow into something extraordinary. But if you plant it in the wrong soil, if you try to live by someone else's rhythm, it will wither, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you try to be good enough, because alignment matters more than effort. Your birth energy isn't asking you to become someone new. It's asking you to remember who you've always been. The shadow and the persona, meeting the forgotten self. From a young age, we're taught who to be: polite, successful, strong. We learn to smile when we're hurting, to conform when we want to scream, to hide parts of ourselves that don't fit the script. That script is called the persona, the mask we wear in the theater of society. It helps us survive, connect, and be accepted, but it is not the whole story. Not even close. Carl Jung wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is." It is a costume, a role, and the longer we play it, the more we begin to forget who we truly are beneath it. The birth of the shadow, what happens to the parts of us that don't fit the role. The anger we weren't allowed to express, the sadness we were told to hide, the wildness, the sensuality, the ambition, all locked away. They don't disappear. They become the shadow. Jung called the shadow the thing a person has no wish to be, but paradoxically, the shadow is where much of your power resides. It holds your authenticity, your fire, your creativity, your truth. The shadow is not evil, it's unconscious, and as long as it stays hidden, it controls you in silence. When persona and shadow are at war, when you live only through the persona, denying the parts of you that don't fit, something strange begins to happen. You feel exhausted without knowing why. You sabotage relationships or dreams. Just when things start going well, you overreact to others, not because of them, but because they mirror a part of yourself you've denied. You might say things like, "Why do I always attract the same kind of person? Why can't I just be happy? Why does life feel so heavy?" The answer often lies not in the outside world, but in the inner one. You've abandoned parts of yourself, and they are now asking to be seen. The gift of shadow work. Here's the paradox Jung revealed. You do not become whole by chasing the light, but by befriending the dark. True healing begins when you no longer run from your fears, but sit with them. When you no longer fight your sadness, but listen to it. When you look in the mirror and say, "This too is part of me." This doesn't mean acting out your anger or living from your wounds. It means integrating them, owning them so they no longer own you. Shadow work is the process of reclaiming what you've rejected And with every part you reclaim, your energy returns. You stop pretending. You start living the dance of persona and shadow. You don't have to throw away the mask. The persona has its place. It allows you to function in the world, but it must become a tool, not a prison. When you consciously hold both your persona and your shadow, something powerful happens. You become real. You speak from truth, not performance. You radiate presence, not pretense. You stop seeking approval because you've already approved of yourself. This is the beginning of individuation. Jung's term for the journey toward the true self. It's not a destination, it's a deep unfolding, a process of integrating all your inner parts, not just the acceptable ones. Are you ready to look within? Ask yourself, what parts of me have I buried? What emotions do I fear feeling? What truth have I been afraid to say even to myself? Because the moment you stop hiding from your shadow, you begin to reclaim your life, and as Jung reminded us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The light you seek is hidden in the places you've been taught to avoid, and only by walking through that darkness can you truly come home to yourself. Real people, real patterns, how archetypes shape everyday lives. To truly understand ourselves, we must look beyond theory and into the lives we actually live, because patterns are not just abstract ideas, they are personal. They show up in our relationships, our careers, our reactions, and our inner dialogue. Let's meet a few people who could be you or someone you know. Anna, the April pioneer. Anna was born in April, a month that carries the archetypal energy of the pioneer, bold, driven, visionary. She was the kind of person who always needed to be doing, starting projects, setting goals, leading others. Movement gave her purpose. But beneath that fire, there was a shadow she couldn't name, a sense that no matter how much she achieved, it was never enough. She would lie awake at night, replaying conversations, criticizing herself for not being more accomplished, more confident, more perfect. She often felt burned out. Rest felt like laziness. Stillness felt like failure. Jung reminds us that every archetype holds both light and shadow, and Anna had been living from one side of hers for too long. The gift of the pioneer is vision and leadership, but the shadow is impatience, self-judgment, and a deep fear of slowing down. When Anna finally realized this pattern, something shifted. She began to understand that rest is not weakness, that her worth was not tied to productivity, and that being still is sometimes the bravest act of all. Roberto, the May builder. Roberto, on the other hand, was born in May, the month of grounding energy. His archetype was that of the builder, reliable, responsible, steady. He spent his life constructing a stable foundation for himself, his family, his legacy. He was admired for his loyalty, his discipline, and his unwavering sense of duty. But inside, he lived in a quiet prison, a fear of change, a terror of the unknown, an inability to show vulnerability when retirement approached. Instead of joy, he felt emptiness. The routines that once gave him comfort now felt like walls closing in. He had done everything right, and yet something essential had been missing all along: the courage to ask, "What do I want?" Roberto had built a life, but forgotten to nourish his inner world. His archetype, when fully integrated, allows him to create with purpose, not just structures, but meaning. But the shadow had kept him rigid, afraid to let life surprise him. His healing began when he accepted that control is not the same as safety, and that true stability comes not from structure but from inner alignment. What these stories teach us: both Anna and Roberto were living inside unconscious patterns, driven by their archetypes, but also haunted by their shadows. Neither of them were broken. They were simply unaware. And that's the truth for many of us. Jung believed that unconscious patterns will continue to rule our lives until we bring them into the light. The same argument with your partner, the same job dissatisfaction every few years, the same inner voice saying, "You're not enough, these aren't just random events, they are part of a personal mythology, a deeper script written by your subconscious." But once you name the pattern, it begins to lose power. Awareness creates choice, a mirror for your own life. So take a moment to ask yourself, what energy has shaped your life so far? What qualities do you always rely on? And what parts of yourself have you ignored or denied? You may find that your greatest strength is also your greatest challenge, that your sensitivity can lead to burnout, your intellect to overthinking, your passion to restlessness. But here's the beauty of archetypes. They are not boxes, they are mirrors. They don't limit you, they help you see clearly. From repetition to revelation, we repeat what we don't repair, and when we live unconsciously, life becomes a loop, not a path. But when we recognize the archetypal forces at play, we stop living by default. We begin to live with intention, and in that moment, the invisible maze starts to open. Patterns become teachers, challenges become invitations, and every step becomes a part of a conscious dance with destiny. From unconscious repetition to conscious evolution. Have you ever found yourself stuck in the same kind of relationship, the same emotional cycle, the same inner conflict, even when you thought you had changed? It's not because you're weak, it's not because you're broken, it's because you're unaware. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate," and that is where real transformation begins, in awareness, the power of inner recognition. We often search outside ourselves for answers: books, advice, therapy, astrology, or signs from the universe, but the most profound shift happens the moment you see yourself clearly, your patterns, your triggers, your hidden beliefs, your forgotten wounds. They have been quietly shaping your reality. Every choice, every reaction, every relationship. But when you make them visible, you gain something priceless. Choice. You are no longer a passive passenger in your life, you become the driver, your birth energy, not a limitation, but a map. The month you were born in is not your destiny, it is a starting point, a compass, an invitation to explore a specific kind of inner terrain. Each month carries with it a unique energetic blueprint, and within that energy lie both gifts and shadows. The fire of March may inspire leadership or reckless action. The nurturing heart of July may offer deep empathy or emotional exhaustion. The clarity of September may bring precision or paralyzing perfectionism. The expansiveness of December may offer vision or constant restlessness. These energies aren't here to trap you, they're here to teach you, to help you remember who you really are underneath the layers of conditioning. From fate to freedom. The more you bring awareness to your archetypal energy, both its light and its shadow, the more freedom you create. When you recognize your unconscious need for control, you can choose surrender. When you acknowledge your tendency to please others, you can begin to set boundaries. When you understand your urge to constantly achieve, you can learn the sacred art of rest. What once felt like fate now becomes an invitation to evolve. Living in alignment, true clarity doesn't mean a life without problems. It means a life lived in alignment. When your inner energy and your outer actions begin to reflect each other, life begins to flow differently. You attract people who resonate with your truth. You stop chasing things that drain you. You begin to experience synchronicity, life responding to your growth in subtle but powerful ways. It doesn't mean everything becomes easy, but it does become meaningful. This is conscious evolution. You are not meant to live in unconscious repetition. You are meant to evolve not by force, but through self-awareness. That's the essence of Jung's work, not to escape the shadow, but to integrate it, not to become someone else, but to remember who you are. Your shadow isn't your enemy. Your patterns are not punishments. They are messages from your deeper self asking to be seen, understood, and healed. Your next step. So ask yourself, what have I been repeating unconsciously? What do I feel drawn to that I've been afraid to pursue? What is the deeper lesson of the month I was born? Because once you see it, truly see it, you unlock the power to live differently. And that's when life begins to shift, not because the world changed, but because you did. The dance of awakening. Maybe for the first time, you're beginning to see that your life was never random, that the patterns weren't punishments, that your birth carried more than breath, it carried a message written in the quiet language of archetypes, in the pulse of the universe, and in the rhythm of your soul. You are not here to merely survive routines, you are here to remember, to awaken, to choose. Because once you understand the energy that's been shaping your journey, you can stop fighting it and start dancing with it. This isn't the end, this is your beginning. The next chapter of your life isn't waiting for a perfect moment. It's waiting for you to become conscious. So pause, reflect, listen, and remember, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. The maze was never meant to trap you, it was meant to lead you inward, back to your own soul.